This is Channel News. We listen, we tell, we inspire. This is docu.
Isang magandang araw pong muli sa inyong lahat, mga minamahal kong iDocuers na nanonood ngayon sa ating YouTube channel na iDocu by John Paul SENIEL. Saan man kayo ngayon sa ating Davao Region, sa Mindanao, sa buong bansang Pilipinas at sa buong mundo. Maraming salamat po sa patuloy ninyong pagtangkilik, pagsubaybay, pagsuporta at panunood sa mga videos natin na na-produce dito sa ating channel. Thank you din sa pagbibigay nyo ng comments and suggestions dito sa ating kwentuhan, sa lahat ng videos na natin na-upload where you commented, and also sa mga post natin sa ating Facebook page na naibalik na po sa social media from the hackers. Now, ang docu-vlog po na ito ay tungkol sa pakikipagpulong at pakikipagdialogo ng ating mga dating mga kaibigan nating mga dating rebelde, mga miyembro dati ng Communist Party of the Philippines at ng NPA kay Secretary Clarita Carlos, ang ating National Security Advisor, at sa namumuno ng Department of National Defense na si Senior Undersecretary Faustino. At importante po sa ating mga kaibigang, mga dating rebelde na pag-usapan ang NTF-ELCAC sa harap mismo ni Secretary Carlos. Dahil itong NTF-ELCAC na ito, the projects and programs na nagko-contain sa NTF-ELCAC ay nakatulong sa kanila upang bumalik sila sa mainstream society. I-embrace ulit ang batas ng bansang Pilipinas. Kaya sa kanilang dialogue, as we listen to them, kanilang inilatag ang mga magagandang proyekto na nakatulong sa ating mga residents, community members ng geographically isolated disadvantaged and conflict-affected areas, or ito yung mga GIDA na mga lugar, upang sila ay mabigyang pansin. At diniscuss din ng mga dating rebelde na ito ang mga pwede pang mangyari sa ating mga komunidad once the government ng under kay President Bongbong Marcos ay maipagpatuloy itong NTF-ELCAC na noon ay fueled by an executive order number 70 ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte na whole of nation approach in ending local communist armed conflict. Ang iDocu po ay nakasaksi at nakinig, nag-obserba sa kanilang mga pinag-usapan. And we just hope na the entire proceeding of the said meeting will bring into it will bring into a positive effect. Magkakaroon ng positibong epekto yung naging meeting na iyon. Yun yung dasal namin. Dahil, yun nga, si iDocu ay naging saksi sa mga nagtrabaho at mga naging epekto ng NTF-ELCAC noong dating Presidente Rodrigo Duterte.
With the big push that was given to us by the Task Force ELCAC, we became more confident in the conduct of our operations, and this further resulted to the unhampered success of our counter-insurgency as a whole. No? Case in point, dito lamang po sa area ng 1003, no, sa area ni General Yekla, from the last quarter of 2021 to the present, more than 100 full-time NPA combatants ang nag-surrender po sa atin. No? At ito ang naging dahilan na itinayo itong ating Kalinaw Village, no? Kumbaga na fast track po. No? spearheaded by then Mayor and now Vice President Sara Duterte. Dahil nakita ng ating LGU yung need to have a safe haven kung saan pwedeng magstay ang ating mga kakasurrender, no? Kakabalik loob na lamang ng mga friends rescued.
Ang aming panawagan sa NTF-ELCAC, palakasin, patibayin at palawakin. Noong in-interview ako nila ni Ka-Eric at ni Ma'am Loren, sabi ko magandang larawan sa mga magsasaka at lumad ang NTF-ELCAC. Ngayon pa lang nila natikman at nakita ang NTF-ELCAC. Dapat suportahan ay Pangulong Marcos, Pangulong Bongbong, suportahan, palakasin pa at patibayin. At dagdagan ang pundo para mas patibay pa ang implementasyon. At ipalaman ko pa ang mga sabi man ngayon sa mga kasama, yung mga nagbalik loob sa gobyerno, ayusun ang mga kaso para mas hindi na matakot sila habang nandito sila sa kanilang mga tirahan. Maraming mga kaso.
Para kasi sa amin, particular sa akin, no, the NTF-ELCAC is very different from the previous approaches. No, we have right now former commanders of the NPA. Kami din ay nag-aaral ng iba't ibang mga counterinsurgency approach ng ating pamahalaan simula nung panahon pa ni former President Corazon Aquino. So we have studied all approaches, and even before kami sumuko, talagang we have this conclusion that the government will not be able to defeat the CPP, NPA, NTF amidst all strong campaigns militarily and politically against the CPP, NPA, NTF. Despite nga nun, mas lumakas nung panahon ng 2014 hanggang 2016 yung CPP, NPA, NTF, particular dito sa Mindanao. Now, after that, dun pa nagkaroon ng malakas na appreciation yung ating gobyerno sa usapin ng insurgency. That's why kami mga former rebels, kami po yung naniniwala that an effective counterinsurgency is anchored towards a profound and impartial understanding of what the enemy is. No, that's really a very old adage, no, of Sun Tzu, that knowing the enemy and knowing ourselves, no, is very important, no, para magtagumpay tayo sa isang digmaan. Now, on our end, we have always been staunchful, no, of giving inputs and briefings sa ating, especially sa ating security sector, na yung pundasyon ng insurgensiya ay nagmumula sa iba't ibang forma ng inustisya, no, sa ating bansa. Like me, I was a former student of the University of the Philippines, Visayas in 2007. My time, Prof, was the time of the implementation of the tuition increase and the reinstitutionalization of STFAB, increasing the tuitionability from 200 to up to 1,500 pesos per unit. I think that time the president was former President Emerlinda Roman, no, in 2007. That was also the time that the UP Charter was amended. No? So, yun yung mga kwento ng mga kasamahan natin dito really anchored from different societal problems. So, we have IPs who suffered a different, they were deprived of different services before. There were no schools and health clinics inside these very far-flung areas of our indigenous people. Ating mga magsasaka, gaya na nakwento ni Kabinoy, talaga before napagkaitan ng kanilang karapatan na makapagmay-ari ng mga lupain. No, these things, no, were not well appreciated before, no, by our government. No? Reason why kahit gaano pakalakas yung nagiging combat operation, combat campaign ng isang unit ng Philippine Army, the NPA will persist to exist, no, because of the existing societal and issues and injustices sa ating lipunan. That's why yung concept of whole of nation approach ng ating gobyerno is really, how do I say this? It's really a turning point of the government. Now, as a matter of fact, the whole of nation approach was institutionalized in 2018, but before that, way back in 2015, 16, and 17, whole of nation approach has already been a practice, no, of the 10th Infantry Division in particular. No? We have a new administration under President Bongbong Marcos Jr. Mga former rebels po are very hopeful na may pagpapatuloy ng ating Pangulo as the chairman of the National Task Force ELCAC. Also, Ma'am Professor, as the Vice Chairman, we are very optimistic that the accomplishments, no, of the NTF-ELCAC will serve as a very huge legacy of the former administration and will serve as an inspiration na there's really hope in ending communist insurgency, and it starts with good governance. It starts with being truthful in our service to the people, also being attentive to the well-being of the masses, no, well-being of our indigenous people, the well-being of our farmers, the well-being of every sectors of our society. Hindi naman significant, but may paglakas or hindi gaanong natugunan yung issue ng recruitment of the CPP, NPA, NDF inside higher educational institutions, no? Continue pa din yung usapin ng recruitment, no, to the NPA and to the underground movement, no, of the CPP, NPA inside both private, no, and public state universities and colleges. One comment that I have is that maybe there are lacking, no, in the components of how we should approach, especially the academe, kasi iba yung academe sa labas ng akademya, iba yung academe sa isang IB community. Academe, it's a venue of freedom of thoughts. It's a venue of academic freedom. It's a venue wherein there's very highly diverse na mga ideas, ideologies, and thoughts coming from different constituents of the university. Now, that of course, that includes communism. No? There are even schools that may mga kurso about Karl Marx, no? Of course, about communism, about socialism, about the mode of production, and all of that. So, siguro magandang magkaroon ng isang focus group discussion on how we can effectively, if not eradicate, but reduce, no, the recruitment to the NPA, especially coming from our young scholars ng bayan, no, inside state universities and colleges, also in private schools. It's about time na we think outside of the box, no, na perhaps what we have been doing in the past may not be enough, no, to address issues of recruitment to the NPA inside our very own universities and colleges. And I think one way, of course, is to continue our campaign and our crusade to always, of course, share the truth, no? Parating ibahagi yung katotohanan sa ating mga, lalong-lalo na sa kabataan, kasi recruitment to the NPA nagsa-start siya kapag hindi na de-disclose at hindi na i-inform ng buong-buo yung isang kabataan.
The 1003rd Infantry Brigade brilliantly crafted its strategic and tactical military and civil military campaign against the Sub-Regional Committee 5. The depth and the magnitude of the CPP-NPA's political and military influence in SRC 5 area of responsibility, particularly in Talaingo, Davao del Norte, portions in San Fernando and Kitaw-Taw, Bukidnon, and the hinterlands in Davao City were carefully identified, researched, and analyzed. The brigade drastically transformed its units to become one with the masses. The great transformation of the armed men in reintegrating to the basic masses allowed them to patiently listen to the decades-long plights and sentiments of the grassroots. The resolute will to balance the 1003rd's triad operations, the strong unity of the Filipino against the CPP-NPA with the help of the NTF-ELCAC, and Peace 911 in Davao City resulted to the complete downfall of the SRC-5. More than hundreds surrendered, only one killed in action in just 5.5 months. With this, it decisively bannered the main objective of the campaign, the preservation of life. As the new leaders have formally been declared and seated as public servants, the unwavering challenge is to advance social justice and genuine care for its people. Hence, we, the former rebels, now the peace champions of the 10th Infantry Division, highly recommend rejecting the national peace talks with the CPP, NPA, NDF. Resuming peace negotiations is a betrayal of the Filipino people and a disgrace to the nation's achievements in dismantling the CPP, NPA, NDF. Looking back, in August 2016, when President Rodrigo Duterte allowed the resumption of peace talks with the Reds, the Southern Mindanao Regional Committee gained the momentum to continue developing base-building strategies and tactics to expand its guerrilla mass base and to consolidate its existing territories thoroughly. The party used the state's current socio-economic and political climate to foster the conditions necessary for widespread mass demonstrations to take place throughout Southern Mindanao. The triumphant land occupation of some 5,000 members and supporters of the Madaom Agrarian Reform Beneficiaries, or MARBAY, in the Lapanday Foods Corporation in Tagum City, Davao del Norte, was one of the most significant uprisings led by the CPP. The NPA Regional Operations Command recorded more NPA officials and subordinates than any other time in the SMRC's history, totaling over 1,000 or a 20% increase. We must steadfastly uphold the current administration's push for good governance. The real driving force behind achieving social justice is a well-functioning government. Our government has a moral and legal duty to the people to promote social justice. The defeat of the CPP, NPA, NDF will be inevitable if the government sincerely attempts to address the underlying causes of violence and exploitation. The power of the people is the sole deciding factor that will ultimately put an end to the longest-running communist insurgency in history.
This is very critical right now because we've noticed an uptick or an upward trend sa recruitment, lalong-lalo na sa ating mga estudyante, lalong-lalo na sa mga youth.
Undersecretary Jose Kalingasan Faustino Jr., Officer in Charge, Department of National Defense, ang kanyang taos-pusong pasasalamat sa parangal. Inawad natin sa kanya sa umagang ito.
This could be this is very evident doon sa lumabas nung last election kung saan talagang maraming mga kabataan natin ang nagsuporta sa ilang party list groups na identified sa kaliwa. So we have talked about this sa ating mga previous conferences with the Armed Forces of the Philippines, how to address this issue. And using the best practices of particularly Eastern Mindanao Command, like what we have talked during our meeting a while ago, we will have to nationalize the effort using the best practices na ginawa dito sa Davao region. So, yun. Then yung kay yung question about yung kay Kamarikip, yung peace talks. I think pinag-usapan na namin ito ni na National Security Advisor, si Ma'am Clarita Carlos. And we have presented yung stand ng ELCAC dito, the National Task Force ELCAC, that there will be no peace talks at the national level. But we will push through with the local peace engagement like how successful we are sa local level, provincial, even regional and municipal level ng peace engagement. So yun yung ano natin, yun ang track na sinusunod ng National Task Force ELCAC.
Committed kami na to help the government saka the Filipino people para sa makamit yung kapayapaan. Yun nga lang po, dahil sa kami pala lahat may mga kaso po. nalilimitahan po yung yung pagtulong po namin sa mga tao, tsaka yung kahit na yung kasi yun nga may mga pending cases. Ang mga panahon po namin laging nasa korte, kahit na po yung mga security forces po natin. Siyempre kailangan namin ng yung kasama-sama, sir, di ba, sir? Kailangan namin ng may mga gwardiya kami, tapos di pa kasama pa yung fuel. Sa totoo, gumagasto ang gobyerno para makatulong din kami. Pero syempre, kung sana may makahanap tayo ng paraan na mamenos-menosan ang gasto, tapos yung mapa-shorten ng kaunti yung po. Yun nga po, yung amnesty po. Maraming salamat. Magandang hapon.
Hindi lang natin mahabol yung nasa court na, but pwede siguro kung tayo yung complainant, baka pwedeng kausapin natin yung yung tayo rin, kasi tayo nag-file yung those in government like AFP at saka Philippine National Police. Baka pwede nating ayusin. But if there are private complainants, like for example, father, mother na pinatay, in front of them, yung anak nila, pinatay ng NPA, ganon. So, wala tayong magawa doon if they do not like to withdraw the case.
Ito po ba yung programa ng NTF-ELCAC po na maipagpapatuloy po ba ito? Gusto naming malaman na mapagpatuloy pa ba ito? Kasi po, marami pong naitulong sa amin ito.
Marami na kayo napagdaanan, nahirap sa buhay, at marami tayong oportunidad na naghihintay sa atin beyond our comprehension sa mga tulong na makukuha natin. Kasi ang ELCAC hindi naman siya it's not just an organization, it's tinatawag natin whole of nation approach, whole of government approach. So lahat ng agencies nandiyan yung support. Makakaasa kayo na tuloy-tuloy, it will be a continuing program, katulad na sinabi nung naunang nagsalita, papalawakin, lakasin natin ang ELCAC para lalo pang makatulong sa inyo. In fact, marami na kami pinag-usapan ni Ma'am Claire, ni Secretary Carlos about mga funding support from other nations na nagbo-volunteer para makatulong sa atin sa mga limited resources ng ating government. But of course, nandito po ang whole of agency natin, whole of government, to really ensure that the programs and projects of the National Task Force will continue.
Okay, I've been an educator for more than half a century, like 56 years, because I'm now 76, from the University of the Philippines. And I laud those alumni from my university. You're very articulate, and the country needs you. I think the issue of education is so central to what we're doing in terms of getting you back into the fold of society and become active participant in the building of a better Philippines. I congratulate all of you for having the courage to come back, to be embraced by the Republic and the government. But that said, I think you should be able to make yourselves competent, knowledgeable, and skilled before you can become active participant in the making of our nation. So I guess General Salamat and I and all the other actors involved here, we really have have to pay particular attention to education. As I always say, you want to reform society, there are three things: education, education, and education. Because everything else will emanate from that. It is the greatest multiplier effect for the reformation of society. Do you agree? Yes. There is a certain sadness in me as I was listening, especially to the University of the Philippines students. Because I've been there. I was a freshman in 1962 when the whole campus was reeking of activism. I was also there running in the streets, about the military bases, the abuses there. But I graduated from that phase in my life. And I realized later on that the best way to really serve as a productive citizen of our country is to be somebody, an architect, an engineer, a scientist like me, because that is really all the efforts that we need. Because after all, the support that you get from the government through the NTF-ELCAC, I want you not to put the government in the vortex of your life. Because I want you to have the individual initiative to improve yourself and to derive your self-worth from your own work. It's a challenge that I am giving everyone. The support will be given to you, ang suporta ay ibibigay sa inyo. No? Everything, in education, livelihood, skills. That's why it's called the whole of government approach. Every one of the 21 departments, we really have to put together all their efforts and energy to make these things happen. We only need your participation in the program. And at a later time, I want you to spin away from the program and become a citizen, tracking your own future, whatever that future might be, and moving away from the centeredness of the government as, an ingredient in your life. After all, I'm a political scientist, so I know that the verb for government is not to control, nor to command, but to regulate, which means that the individual effort is really the seed of all development that can happen. You will notice the government is not supposed to be an employment agency. It is really the private sector. You'll be businessmen, you will be engineers, you'll be scientists. You are the one who will create value. So these are the things that I would need to impart to you as an educator. And yes, you talked about recruitment. This is happening in the university setting. You talked about teaching, socialism, Karl Marx. I teach that course. That's a course in political theory, isn't it? It's okay to advocate communism, fascism, whatever ism you want to advocate. It is not okay to attempt to overthrow the government. Do you see the difference? It's okay to be an ideologue and to believe in these things, isn't it? It's okay to believe in anything that you want to believe in because we are living in a liberal democracy. But it is not okay when you engage in violence. I also teach a course in political psychology, so I have an understanding, a deeper understanding and a broad understanding of the nature of political violence. And it doesn't start with violence right away. It starts with alienation. I'm sure all of you started with alienation. So what I'm saying is that, Secretary Faustino, you've been faced with this continuing issue of recruitment. Do you know that we cannot stop anything that is happening in the university, and it's not just in the UP, because we are cloaked in the academic freedom principle. Like, you cannot attend my class unless I allow you to, isn't it? I design my own syllabus. The moment another person tells me to redesign my syllabus, I tell him to go to hell, because that's part of academic freedom, for me to design the syllabus according to my best light. So if I want to teach a political theory course, the whole semester of 16 weeks on Karl Marx, I will do that. And nobody can interpose any objection. That said, if you've been to University of the Philippines Diliman campus, this recruitment is happening under the banana tree, under the acacia tree. And you'd really have to be a superwoman or superman to be able to track down all these things which are happening, because they're not happening in the one-off thing. They're happening continuously, and they're happening in different settings. I would rather that we concentrate our minds and our programs on removing the things that causes you to rebel. Why do men rebel? Edgar, men rebel because of relative deprivation. It's not so much that you're poor, because, otherwise every poor person would just be a rebel. It's not the case. It's because Amihan got more than Marikit and she rebelled. See, it's relative deprivation. It's not absolute deprivation. And that is grounded in empirical literature. In other words, it's evidence-based. So that is the one that we should address. Because recruitment is simply a symptom of something that is happening on the ground. So even while you may have all the noble efforts to stop it, within a university setting, it is difficult to stop it unless you violate certain rules like wiretapping. And you know that you need a court order to do that. Yeah, so this is not to denigrate the efforts of the military secretary Faustino. It is really to establish the environment within which we keep on, pushing and hoping that recruitment will stop. I want us to rethink and shift gear and really look at the source of why our students are in fact turning to be rebels. And look at the age. We get you at around 16, 17, 18. If you look at the development of your brain, that is the time when you are a high-risk taker, isn't it? A very high-risk taker. And that happened to me, that happened to my brother, who is with the Philippine Science High School. We just wanted to change the world, but we went beyond that phase. And we wanted to change the world by being scholars and by being a professor.
Pero bago pa man po nakipagpulong si Secretary Clarita Carlos sa ating mga dating rebelde o mga friends rescued, ay una niyang binisita ang ating Eastern Mindanao Command. And doon ay na-brief siya ng ating commander na si Lieutenant General Greg Almerol. At doon ipinaliwanag sa kanya yung mga naging trabaho ng Eastern Mindanao Command, assisted by NTF-ELCAC and other local government units. At doon sa briefing kay Secretary Carlos, na ipaliwanag sa kanya na under sa Peace, Law Enforcement and Development, I think the record is about after the NTF-ELCAC was implemented, nagkaroon po tayo ng 3,000 enemies na na-neutralized. Ito po ay sa loob ng Eastern Mindanao Command. Eastern Mindanao Command is covering 2 divisions. Ito po yung 4th Infantry Division at ang 10th Infantry Division. Ang 10th Infantry Division, yun yung the whole of Davao Region, coverage niya yun. Tapos some portions of Sarangani Province at ng area ng Province of Cotabato. Yun po ang 10th ID. Tapos ang 4th ID, ito po yung Northeastern Mindanao Command. Ito yung area kung saan gumagalaw ang Northeastern Mindanao Regional Committee, North Central. Basta it is covering Agusan del Sur, Agusan del Norte, the Caraga region, and then yung Bukidnon and other portion doon sa going to Iligan City, mga portions doon. Yun yung bumubuo ng 4th Infantry Division. I'm not so particular o well-versed sa mga areas na kinocover ng 4th Infantry Division. Now, going back doon sa briefing kay Secretary Carlos, meron tayong, again, 3,051 enemies na na-neutralized. Ito yung mga NPAs na sinasabi. And meron ding 2,876 firearms na na-recover or confiscated. May 594 cleared barangays. May 219 high-value individuals na na-neutralized. 23 guerrilla fronts dismantled. Ibig sabihin na walang leadership, natalo sila, wala ng members, at you cannot find them anymore sa mga bundok na mga areas na ito. And we have, they also dismantled 10 NPA vertical units. And naipaliwanag din kay Secretary Carlos yung regarding sa sectoral unification, capacity building, empowerment and mobilization na merong nagawang 1,492 people's organization. Merong 216 members of POs federated in the municipal and provincial level, and 50 federated people's organizations assemblies and 110 trainings. Also, meron ding sa localized peace engagement, nagkaroon po ang Eastern Mindanao Command ng 734 community consultations and problem-solving sessions, 128 local peace dialogues, at 1,261 other peace-building initiatives. Sa kanilang strategic communications naman, ang Eastern Mindanao Command, as they brief Secretary Carlos, may 132 press conferences or media conferences, 312 press releases, 624 radio and TV program na mga engagement nila. They have 5,858 social media operations, 717 IPs or tribal leaders engagements, and 1,629 pulong-pulong or peace dialogues. They also conducted 89 peace rallies and 108 loudspeaker operations. Sa kanila namang e-clip and amnesty program, merong 2,722 immediate assistance para sa, ito yung 15,000 pesos per FR or per former rebel. And meron ding 2,208 livelihood assistance. 50,000 ito per FR. And they also have given 2,155 reintegration assistance, which is 21,000 per FR, and 698 firearms remuneration. Also, nakapagbigay din sila o namahagi din sila ng 366 housing units given to FRs and 17 completed halfway houses. Yan po ang naging observation natin sa pagbisita ni Secretary Carlos, and as she was briefed by the management and administration of Eastern Mindanao Command. Habang kami ay nanonood, nagko-cover, nakikita naman namin na tuwang-tuwa sa Secretary Carlos sa mga development na nangyari in the past bago pa man siya umupo bilang Secretary ng National Security Council. At yun po ang nangyari bago siya nakipagdialogo sa mga dating rebelde. And we hope that the briefing na nakuha ni Secretary Carlos from these military officials. By the way, during that visit, nagkaroon din ng demilitarization sa mga firearms na na-confiscate, na-recover from the New People's Army. And ang nanguna din po sa demilitarization ng mga armas na ito ay si Secretary Carlos, si DND Senior USEC na si Sir Faustino, and other members of the party. And after which, nagkaroon din sila ng closed-door meeting. That's why we are hoping na lahat ng mga impormasyon na nakuha ni Secretary Carlos from Eastern Mindanao Command at sa ating mga minamahal na mga dating rebelde makakatulong iyon upang maipagpatuloy nga ng seriously ang NTF-ELCAC at magkaroon pa, mag-craft pa ng ibang program to really help and assist yung mga malalayong lugar sa ating bansang Pilipinas at upang matulungan din pa ang ating mga rebelde dating mga rebelde na makapagbagong buhay at maging independyente sa pamumuhay nila na hindi na sila aasa lahat sa ating pamahalaan. Thank you very much, my dear iDocuers, for watching this wonderful docu-vlog na kinover natin dito sa Eastern Mindanao Command sa ating Davao Region sa isla ng Mindanao. Please po, pakishare po ang video na ito sa inyong mga kaibigan, mga kamag-anak upang malaman din nila ang mga ibang katotohanan na hindi po madalas ibinabalita ng mainstream media. Share nyo po sa Facebook accounts ninyo, sa newsfeed ninyo, or sa mga group chat ninyo sa Telegram, sa Viber, at saka sa Messenger. Maraming salamat po. And sa inyo pong lahat na hindi pa po nakakapag-subscribe sa ating YouTube channel, please do subscribe sa ating YouTube channel na iDocu by John Paul Seniel. And please don't forget to click the notification bell for you to be alerted once we have new uploads. And also, for your comments and suggestions, please do send them sa ating email address na naka-flash sa inyong screen o di kaya sa ating messenger sa Facebook. Sa Diyos po ang papuri at kaluwalhatian. Mula po dito sa Davao City, Mindanao, Philippines, para po sa iDocu, ako po, si John Paul Seniel.
This is